Playing video games as a young boy was absolutely critical in later helping me to escape the matrix early as a young man. And what video games gave to me was many opportunities to do highly unusual things, experiments, play styles, in virtual settings where the risks were low and there was anonymity, which then later directly correlated with my willingness and openness to do highly unusual things in the real life. I posted a link to one of my prior videos below where I explain how at a time when I was living in New York City and housing prices were like 9 times my income, and I thought that it was impossibly out of reach and growing increasingly so, I was able to get 80% of what I wanted in a house and pay it off completely in a period of 30 days. And while it was not the exact house that I would want in my dreams at the time, most people were trying to stretch and do everything they could to buy the exact house that they wanted and pay it off over a period of 30 years. And I said to myself, I wonder if I can do this in an absurdly short amount of time. Speed running speeds. And it turns out that I was able to do it. I bought a 2-family house in a slightly different location in cash with a renter in place so that at age 30, I drove my living costs to zero after factoring in the rent, which paid for property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. And I did it by combining several off the beaten path, off meta strategies. I bought in a location that not many people were looking at. I bought it in a condition where it would require renovation to get it into the final beautiful live-in form. I bought it from a distressed seller. I bought it from someone that was not a real estate agent and was also not directly from the owner. And I bought it using cash. So all these things were highly unusual. And over the years, I've tried to talk to people about this, and I usually lose them at the first point or the second point. And I thought to myself, how come they're not getting it? Their eyes seem to be glazing over at point 1 or 2, and I'm not anywhere close to being able to explain to them the entire chain of strategies or the combo which results in something amazing. Owning your own house free and clear at age 30, which was how old I was at the time. What was it about me which made me open to implementing, learning about, thinking about, considering, and overall processing all these unusual things? I believe it all started when I played video games as a young boy. So the games I preferred to play were RPGs. I played one of the first online text-based multiplayer fantasy games called Gemstone 4. This was a virtual world where it was in a fantasy setting and you could choose to be a warrior or a rogue or a sorcerer or a cleric or a healer, the typical RPG classes. And in typical fashion, most people played the classes the way they were supposed to be played. People that wanted to be warriors, they usually picked a race like a giant man, and they picked up the biggest hammer or the biggest sword that they could and put on the heaviest armor and went off to war and started hacking and slashing at monsters. And that was their playstyle, which was completely fine. Similarly, the sorcerers were the complete opposite of that. They typically did not use weapons, and definitely not heavy weapons or heavy armor. They stayed back and relied on their magical spells to blast monsters with their with like fireballs and lightning bolts. And they would equip themselves with magic armor, which would prevent them from getting damaged. These were two classical normal playstyles. Me being the odd duck that I was, starting at around age 11, I was never interested in that. I was not impressed at all by the most powerful warrior in the lands with the biggest sword or the most powerful magical armor. I wasn't even interested in the sorcerer, like the guy who could conjure up a thunderstorm and just blast a whole room of monsters into smithereens, and he's all just like glowing with special effects and magical items and equipment so that the monsters couldn't touch him. Those were tried and true normal playstyles. What intrigued me was when I would run into people playing characters in ways that were opposite the way they were intended to be played. I'll give you one example. Was I'm in a room one day in a forest somewhere. I'm probably killing orcs. And in walks another player character, piloted by a human being behind a screen. So I go take a look at him and I see what this guy's about. And I see that he was a warrior. And I said, okay, he's a warrior. And I expect him to start swinging a weapon like a sword or an axe at any time to kill the orcs, because there were many of them in the room with me. But no, this warrior, he starts casting spells. And that piqued my curiosity. I'm like, excuse me, what is this guy doing? I didn't even realize that warriors could cast spells, or if they could cast spells, it would be like so ridiculously expensive and difficult to do so that it would not even be worth it. It was not a known viable playstyle to me at the time. But sure enough, this warrior was casting spells and was using magic to help him kill orcs. And I had never seen anything like that. And he was also wearing an unusual bit of armor that was very different from the typical, full armor, full plate that most people in these games would wear to defend themselves and protect themselves from head to toe. He was wearing armor that was much lighter and similar to what spellcasters would use. So I was like, this is an odd duck all the way around. So with that being one example of an unusual off-meta playstyle in a virtual world, I decided to start experimenting with those types of playstyles in this video game. So with this one guy, a spell-casting warrior, being an inspiration to me, I decided, can I start playing different character classes in odd, funny ways and still be effective and make it work? And that's exactly what I did. And I found that the answer overwhelmingly was yes. And over time, even as a young boy, I practiced going intentionally against the grain, against intended game design, against the crowd, and doing things which looked very weird to a lot of people that they didn't understand what I was doing, and half the time I didn't understand what I was doing until I played it for a while and really figured it out. And at times, my experiments were absurd failures that got me absolutely destroyed and was completely not viable. Those were also very real. So why am I telling this story? I'm telling the story because I think that people nowadays trying to do what society tells them and to follow these tried and true paths. Oh, go to college, study, get a good degree, get a good paying job in a profession like a lawyer, engineer, or doctor, buy yourself a nice house following a formula that's based on a percentage of your income that's affordable, and then work for 30 years. Maybe you'll pay it off when you're 60, 65, and then you'll be able to enjoy your retirement. These life scripts have a kind of cultural momentum where it's hard for people to break out. That's how I interpret it. So unless there are opportunities for people to practice being weird, disagreeable, to do unusual things in low stake setting, preferably anonymously, by the time they get to being adults, they are basically the most vanilla, bland, conditioned product of their countries and their cultures. And in all probability, they're going to get average, normal life outcomes, which seem to be getting increasingly worse over time. So that's the end of this video for me. I'll continue sharing stories from my very, very unusual and weird life in the hopes of connecting with people that are also odd ducks like me and who are interested in doing things and getting highly unusual results and life outcomes, preferably better ones. All right, that's it. Please leave me any questions in the comment section. Until next time.